It's the radio guy, Mike Prince. Happy holidays to you. Hope you guys are nestled in, enjoying this time off if you're fortunate, but many are on the grind as always. And speaking of, we're going to hear from a long lost little brother. It's been a little while since we last spoke with him. And since we last spoke with him, he's been on Twitter creating firestorms. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. We're going to present for some and introduce to others none other than Coach Shotgun Willie Simmons. How you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing well, Mike. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you too, man. Before we go into your Twitter fire that you created, let's talk about this past Celebration Bowl. Were you shocked? Not at the result of the winner, but the way it was created and developed?
Well, I think it's safe to say we were all shocked. I don't think anyone could have anticipated a 64-44 final. You're talking about the two top defensive teams in the respective conferences going head to head. So I was anticipating more of a defensive slugfest, kind of the way the game started. I think it started a little bit slow. Both teams kind of exchanging punts, and then all of a sudden, both defenses they decided to go home early, and just an offensive explosion from both sides. A&T, fortunately for them, made a few more plays, and then Alcorn and was able to come away with a huge runaway victory, like I said, 64-44. So definitely surprised by the score. Wasn't surprised by the outcome because I picked A&T to win it, but was definitely surprised by the score.
Yeah, and 52 points in the second and third quarter, and it was like the wheels just collapsed. They disintegrated. They didn't fall off. They just disintegrated, and it was to be no more. What do you attribute that to? Do you think that was nerves gone bad? Well, you can't say inexperience when you got 26 seniors. What do you attribute that to?
You know what? That's a great question, and I don't really have the answer to that question. Again, you're talking about two teams who have played really good defense all year. I think the highest output that A&T had given up may have been our game. We scored 34 against them, 35 rather in overtime, and Alcorn, I think outside of maybe I don't even know Southern Miss scored that many points against them. So. I think both teams went in. A&T was right around 18 a game. Alcorn was around 19 a game. They were giving up. And what was surprising was just the busted coverages. Just like a bunch of busted coverages because they were all on big plays. You look at A&T's scoring drives. They were 75-yard touchdown, 70-yard touchdown, 65-yard touchdown, 70-yard touchdown. I mean, talking about probably close to 300 yards of offense on 4 plays. All which results in touchdowns, and kind of the same thing with Alcorn as well. But not sure what that was attributed to. We would like to think at some point there'd be some adjustments made throughout the game. Not being critical as a coach, but it's surprising whenever you see teams score at will that much against a team that on paper is pretty stout on defense.
Right, and occasionally throughout the course of a game, you're going to have some blown assignments here and there from time to time. In most cases, you hope that you don't get bit in the backside from that. But as you mentioned, it was nothing but a series of big plays. Everything would seem like it's rolling right along. Okay, we're going to get these defenses settled in, and then all of a sudden it's a big play. But nonetheless, A&T, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is a legitimate program. And they shown that because good teams capitalize off mistakes and good team try to keep you at a minimum at making big plays to help, overlay them for the lead. And that was the result of the Aggies holding on to beat the Braves.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's one thing that I constantly talk to our team about, especially offensively. The thing that separates the elite offenses and teams from the average to pretty good ones are the elite teams capitalize on mistakes. When you see in Clemson or in Oklahoma, LSU, the teams that will be playing in the college football playoff semifinal this weekend, all of those offenses, if you make a mistake, it's not just a 10-yard gain or a 15-yard gain, it's a touchdown. and A&T showed that last weekend. When Alcorn made a mistake defensively, it wasn't just an explosive play. It was a touchdown. And for whatever reason, Alcorn kept making mistakes defensively, and A&T kept capitalizing on them. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. They've definitely established themselves as a quality program. Broadway came in and really transformed that program around. They really pumped some money into the facilities and the infrastructure. And then you have to tip your hat to Sam Washington. He's come in 2 years and won, the Celebration Bowl consecutive years. And so it definitely shows that they're a quality program, one that has sustainability, and that's what you look for whenever you look at teams that you would consider, great programs or teetering on the line of a dynasty.
We're talking right now with Shotgun Willie Simmons, head football coach of the FamU Rattlers. Had a remarkable season, but due to some infractions, there was a self-imposed postseason ban. And as a result, man, you fired off a tweet about a week or two ago, man, that shots were fired across the country. Can we go back into what triggered you to say that, and what was on your mindset when you let that go?
I don't know what you're talking
about. Need I remind you?
Hey, I mean that's what you're gonna do. Yeah, go and remind me exactly. I know I've tweeted a lot the last.
Okay, well, I'm going to paraphrase, but it simply said that we are the HBCU football champions because we beat everybody in front of us, including those that are representing us in the championship.
Does kind of sound like my phrase, but no, but yeah. I've been asked multiple times since our season ended, and again, unfortunately, we dropped the last game of Bethune-Cookman by 4 in the Florida Classic. Why we feel that we should lay claim to the national championship, and my answer has been pretty consistent. I felt that we look at the totality of our body of work. You look at the teams that we've played this year, that we've beaten this year, and where they rank in the final standings. It merits consideration. And you look at the top 6 or so teams in Black college football this year, unanimously at the Division I level. We're one of them. A&T, who obviously just won the Celebration Bowl. Alcorn State, who obviously just represented the SWAC in the Celebration Bowl. Southern from the SWAC, South Carolina State from the MEAC. We played 4 of the 5 and beat 4 of the 5. We beat South Carolina State. We beat North Carolina A&T, or 3 of the 4. We didn't play Alcorn State, but we beat North Carolina A&T head to head. We beat South Carolina State head to head, and we beat Southern head to head. So the team who was the second place team in the SWAC we beat, and then teams 2 and 3 we had the best record in the MEAC. We beat, and so when you look at it from that perspective, I think it's hard to argue, that we haven't shown that we're the best team. I know there's some who say, well, you have a postseason ban, so you shouldn't be eligible, which I don't really buy that logic because the ban was self-imposed. If the NCAA had come down and rendered us ineligible before the season, that would be one thing. But the whole point of self-imposing is to say, look, we acknowledge that we've done some things wrong in the past. We're taking full responsibility for that. And those are intended to lessen the blow, so to speak. Someone turns themselves in, you turn yourself in to get a lesser sentence, as opposed to being caught. And so, there's a lot of people who have given us a lot of criticism for having a postseason ban, but again, the ban was self-imposed. We don't know what the NCAA might have said if they would have gone there. They might have said, well, you know what, probation or practice restrictions or whatever. We chose to deem probably the most severe penalty that we could have rendered to ourselves, which is a postseason ban, scholarship reductions, and some of those other things that we rendered as a goodwill to show that we accept the full responsibility for our actions from things in the past, not things that are going on today, right now, but things in the past. And there's still a large contingency of people who want to punish us right now for our sins of the past. And I just don't think that that's fair. When you look at who's the best team in the country, look at the facts. Look at what happened on the field this year. Look at the head-to-head matchups. Look at all those things and determine who's the best team. Let's not allow our feelings about a band or whether we should be eligible for that title to muddy the waters. And I think that's what's happening in a lot of those situations.
And speaking of the muddy water, in a simple term, naysayers could also say if you had just taken care of business, you wouldn't have had to do a self-imposement. And part of the doing self-imposement is the acknowledgement, as you said, of the guilt. So therefore, if you're going to accept it, then don't sit up there and create a ruckus on the sideline saying you're number one when technically you're not qualified to be number one.
Well, I definitely understand those sentiments from people if there was something that we were doing currently. You understand, these sanctions are from situations or things that were done from 2010 to 2016. Understand, Willie Simmons was hired at FamU in 2018. I tell everyone, Ryan Stanley, Marcus Williams, DeMontre Moore, all those guys that went and played good football this year, none of those guys were in school in 2010. My freshman class was in the third grade in 2010 when some of these things were taking place. And so this is a data review. This is something, I guess, commonplace. Every university goes through it. They look over the last 5 or 6 years and report things to the NCAA. And throughout that reporting, we found that there were some improprieties. And so, again, we went in and we were proactive in our, asking or requesting a self-imposed ban by the NCAA. And so, again, I would understand if it was something that we did, let's say last year. I came in, our APR scores were low, or one of my coaches got found cheating on the road recruiting, or something like that. Some of the things that some other schools are being penalized for. If that was the case, then I'd say definitely, hey, we understand we're doing things wrong. We shouldn't be eligible for any type of championship or anything. But the president, the athletic director, the head football coach, 100% of this football team, none of us were a part of the things that got us to this point. And so that's why I'm saying I don't think that we should be penalized as a football team and as an administration because of things that were done outside of our control. Don't penalize Ryan Stanley because some guy back in 2010 was certified, by a registrar or whatever the case may be. I'm not going to go into details about what exactly we got, what the sanctions were for, but that's been my stance the whole time. We're taking full responsibility as a university for things that we did wrong. The football team, this current coaching staff had nothing to do with any of that. And I don't think it's fair to penalize the current team, the current coaches, the current support staff, and rob them of a chance to win a championship or claim national champions because of things that were out of their control.
Now, you said that, and let me use this reference, and it might or might not appear to be fair, but this reference just came to mind. Couldn't you compare that to the mistreatment of African Americans with slavery? And to take that approach and say, we had nothing to do with that, so don't penalize us. Wouldn't that be along the same stance that you're taking now?
When you say don't penalize us, when you
say, like you mentioned, you say, hey, that was back in 2010 before I even was here on the job, and my players were in grade school, and we went back and we did the self-impose. And about the being accountable and responsible, that's part of it. But then, as a body of people is saying about retribution, and they're saying, "Hey, man, we don't restitutions, I should say," and they were going like, "Hey, we acknowledge that slavery was a terrible thing, but you're not going to hold that over our head because that was back then. We're in a new millennium now. You got to let that go." Could that be the same reference?
I'm not sure it will be the same because, again, I don't think that really, at least, and this may be outside of my realm of expertise, I'm not really much into politics, but I've never, as a black person, asked for reparations. I've never heard anyone have a conversation or lock in the barbershop, anyone else say, man, that we should get reparations for slavery. I've heard the term. I've heard white people talk about it. I've heard it come up from what's her name, Warren, one of the presidential candidates, talking about reparations. And so that's not something that I think we are saying as a black race that we deserve reparations. We just want a fair shake of the pie, a fair slice of the pie. Give us the same opportunities that, our white counterparts have, or whoever you may have it. And I think that we're saying the same thing. As a football team, we understand we self-imposed a postseason ban. So we're not sitting here saying we should have been in the Celebration Bowl. I understand that. We could not be eligible for the Celebration Bowl. But that's all we rendered ourselves on. We rendered a self-imposed postseason ban. That's it. We didn't render a conference championship ban. We didn't render a Black College National Championship ban. Postseason. That's all we asked for. NCAA. And we petitioned this to the NCAA now. We didn't have to ask the MEAC or have to ask anyone else. We just asked the NCAA to say we are self-imposing a postseason ban. When the regular season's over with, that's it. So everything we earn, we're going to have to earn it during the regular season.
Okay.
I told my football team that. I told the administration that. Whatever we do in those 11 games, let us be judged from that. Nothing else, just those 11 games. And in those 11 games, I felt that we played better football than any team in black college football.
You're not going to get an argument from me. I'm just, my role is to play devil's advocate to get all sides of the story. Now, here's the caveat to that. Okay, knowing that there was going to be a self-imposement and knowing that there's a Celebration Bowl, which has technically been dubbed as the HBCU college football national champion. You agree with that, right?
That's another conversation that we can definitely have.
Right, but walking into this thing with our eyes wide open, part of the excitement, part of the lure was we finally got a game that is going to kind of minimize the talking on who's better and let your best play against our best, and whoever the last man standing is technically the mythical HBCU champion.
Well, and again, I understand that, but this is my position, and I pose this question to the powers that be. And again, I'm all for the Celebration Bowl. I love it. I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for HBCU football. I think it's great for the respective teams who get to go because of the brand exposure and the recognition and all of that. But to say that it is the national championship, I think is a little bit of a stretch because I take it back to, and it hadn't happened, but I take it back to, I think it was 2017 maybe, or 16, my second year. So my second year at Prairie View, of course, the SWAC West was a tough division. You had Grambling, who went undefeated. You had Southern, I think, who had the only loss to Grambling. You had us, who only lost to Southern and Grambling. You had Alcorn on the East, who had lost to all three of us. They lost to Prairie View, lost to Southern, and lost to Grambling. And they even lost a game to, I think, Alabama State on the East. Now, it just so happens that the other teams on the East had all lost 5 or more games. And so Alcorn was the Eastern Divisional winner with 4 conference losses, and they were going into the SWAC championship game against Grambling, who was undefeated. Alcorn jumped up to a 17-0 lead in that game. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Grambling some kind of way came back. Now, let's say Alcorn had won that game, had beaten Grambling in the SWAC championship game. Who's representing the SWAC in the Celebration Bowl? Alcorn State, right?
Right.
With 4 losses.
Right.
Going against, I think it was North Carolina Central, who had 1 loss, and they had it was a tie they could go on because they're going ahead to hit A&T. So if you're taking a 4-loss Alcorn team to the Celebration Bowl because they beat Grambling in the championship game, if Alcorn wins the Celebration Bowl, are they Black College National Champs?
According to the way it is structured, yes, because that's just like
not necessarily because the Celebration Bowl now is not. You said technically, it's not the official.
No. I said I addressed it as the mythical HBCU championship. I've already addressed that.
So that's going to always be, to me, always going to be the naysayers of the Celebration Bowl, and there are some. But the question is always going to be, what happens if Tennessee State makes a historic run in the OVC and goes undefeated and goes to the playoffs and makes it to the semifinals? What happens if Hampton runs through the Big South or whatever conference they're in and gets to the playoffs and goes. And to neither one of those teams be in consideration for the Black College National Championship, because neither one will ever play in the Celebration Bowl because they're no longer in the SWAC and the MEAC. And so I think as long as you have that dynamic where you're not saying, okay, we're going to, and it's not going to happen, but if you wanted to make it a true national championship, quote unquote, we'll say, okay, well, the top two teams in Black College football at the end of the regular season are going to go play in Atlanta. I don't care what conference you're in. I don't care where you are at the time, but the number 1 and 2 teams by the rankings are going to play in Atlanta. Now, that would make for a true national championship. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I would agree, but I would also agree, too, because I've been on both sides of the coin. If you're going to be part of the FCS community, then play for the FCS title and remove all doubts and naysayers and get it done. I mean, because, go ahead.
Yeah, but Tennessee State and Hampton would never be able to technically claim a Black College National Championship if that's the case.
Well, I'm talking about a champion. I'm talking about a champion, period. I'm talking about if you're all in the FCS, that's what we are. That's what we've been identified for. That's what we pay our fees, that we could be associated with FCS. If you do not want to, structure your programming, your scheduling according to that, then get out of the FCS and go independent. That's my take on it. Okay, but if you're going, because I think is somewhat foolish for people in the HBCU conferences to say that the FCS playoffs don't matter when they do matter. If they didn't matter, then don't be affiliated with them. That's my point of view.
Yeah, I think they definitely matter, and I think there's a place for it, and I think that's a discussion that definitely needs to be had and should be had as to which one long term is better for the programs. Again, and I get asked that question all the time, and I think both answers suffice. If you're talking about short term and what it can do for your program immediately, I definitely believe the Celebration Bowl is the benefit. Look at A&T; they've gone 4 to 5 years at $500,000 to $600,000 a pop. You're talking about $2 million that they've generated for their program in the university just simply by going to that game. That's $2 million that no other program in Black college football has been able to claim. And it's not from a guarantee. It's not from going to play a Power 5 team and getting $500,000 to get your head beat in.
Right.
It's to go play a team that's just like you on a national stage that's going to give you national credibility and free advertising for a whole day as one of the first bowl games in the bowl season. So it's a tremendous benefit from a institutional standpoint, from a financial standpoint, to play in the Celebration Bowl. But if you're trying to build your program to say that you are one of the best teams in all of FCS, eventually you're going to have to go up against a North Dakota State, a James Madison, a Sam Houston State, and those teams, that are going to the playoffs perennially to show that you're one of the best teams in the country.
Well, see, I got an even better idea. This year wouldn't probably work because how late they pushed the game for the FCS championship. It's going to be January 11th. But they normally would have had that thing around this weekend coming up after Christmas, right around that Christmas holiday time. Why not the winner of the FCS championship play the winner of the Celebration Bowl and just shut it all down?
Well, again, what would be the benefit to the other FCS conferences for doing that? Because if you look at it, the highest ranked team in Black college football right now is FamU, and we're, I think, 20th. A&T was 23rd, I think, in the latest poll. Now they'll reshuffle them after the national championship game, and we'll see where everyone falls. But if you're asking a North Dakota State or James Madison who will play for the FCS national championship this in January, if you're asking them to play that game and then turn around and play the winner of the Celebration Bowl, which may be a team that's ranked in the 20s or even unranked, if it was in the case of Alcorn, what would be the benefit to those PWIs? I don't think there is a benefit to them. Again, I think we as HBCUs have to make a decision and decide whether we want to be a part of the conversation of being one of the best teams or the best team in Division I FCS football, or if we want to keep our niche, which is what the Celebration Bowl is. It's a niche because we're the only two conferences in all of FCS football who opt to play in a bowl game, which is in the FBS. which is the whole acronym: Football Bowl Subdivision, Football Championship Subdivision. So Division One FBS Bowl Subdivision, those teams in their regular season with bowl games. Championship Subdivision, we end our regular season with a playoff system. And so we're kind of unique. We are unique in that sense, where at the ending of our season shifts more to the FBS programs because we actually do play in a bowl game that's sanctioned by the NCAA, that's paid out by the whole thing, just like not like the college football playoff per se, but just like the Independence Bowl that I was watching today between Miami and Shreveport, Miami and Louisiana Tech. The Celebration Bowl is no different. It's a bowl game that's played during bowl season, and so if we're going to keep that, we're always going to be in that type of situation where we won't ever be able to do what Florida A&M did in 1978 and won the first 1AA or FCS championship. That won't happen again because as of right now, the two winners go to the Celebration Bowl unless it's a Tennessee State or a Hampton, or for whatever reason, if a team wins the MEAC or SWAC and opts out of the playoffs, which that hadn't happened up to this, not playoff, but the Celebration Bowl, and that hadn't happened up to this point. So there's definitely probably a conversation for another show, but no, it's definitely a lot of moving parts, so to speak. And when you're talking about a black college national champion as opposed to a Division I FCS national champion.
Now, someone listening to this is saying, oh, Simmons is just saying that because he's got sour lemons and they didn't make it, and he's just salty right now. He wouldn't be saying that if they had made it to the Celebration Bowl. That's going to happen.
No. I trust me, and I've said this on record. So, again, people have asked me before, which would I prefer? And my answer has always been the same. Today, as of right now, I would prefer that FamU, if we were eligible, to play in the Celebration Bowl. Our financial issues have been well documented. We need money. And so I'm not going to turn down the opportunity to go out and make $500,000 in a football game. That's what we're supposed to do as coaches, as administrators, generate revenue for our programs. Now, if you get us to the point where we are financially stable and we can build our program the way that we want to and not have some of the needs that we have year to year, then hey, let me build my program up and let me go up against the top 24 teams or 23 teams, us being the 24th in the country now. And let us see if we can go and be like I said, like Rudy Hubbard in the 78 team. I would love to bring in national championship, a true Division I FCS national championship to Tallahassee. Not just a black college national championship. I want that too. But my ultimate goal is to build this program up to become the best program in FCS football, just like North Dakota State, just like a James Madison, that we're year in and year out in the mention for being one of the best teams in the country, top 10 program. That's my long-term goal. But right now, I don't know if that's feasible because, again, our financial position doesn't dictate that we can afford to bypass a chance to go to the Celebration Bowl for a chance at the FCS playoffs. So, no, this is not a pitch either one way or another about the Celebration Bowl or the FCS playoffs. Again, I think that there's merit to both. It's just, again, long term, I think if you ask most coaches at our level, we would love the opportunity to match our wits up against some of the perceived best programs at the FCS level. And I think that's even why you see A&T opening up the season next year against North Dakota State, because I think they want to show everyone that, hey, we can play with the North Dakota State on an equal level playing field, just like they did against Jacksonville State a couple of years ago. So, again, I think that's what we all long-term want to do. Just right now, that's just not the reality.
We're talking right now with Shotgun Willie Simmons, and as always, man, I appreciate the candidness and the straightforward on your answers and reply. I think that's why we make good radio. Now, look, we talk about it, and let's address this elephant in the room. And I'm not going to ask you from a coach's perspective because you have comrades to deal with. But Mike Prince, not Willie Simmons, Mike Prince says that as far as FCS legitimacy and acceptability for the MEAC and the SWAC compared to all this other brethren from the FCS, we still have a long way to go. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would have to put us somewhere between a 3 and 4 of our willingness to compete from beginning to end based on results that we encounter when we play teams from the OVC, MVC, and from the Southland. What is your response to that?
Well, I think it's getting better. You may be right as far as the perception. I do think there's still a general perception that we're not on par with our PWI counterparts. But again, that's why when I was at Prairie View, I was adamant about scheduling teams in the Southland Conference. You know, Nicholls State, Sam Houston, Incarnate Word, and you know we beat Incarnate Word my last year there. We lost to Nicholls and lost to Sam, but we beat Incarnate Word. Incarnate Word turned around the next year and won the Southland Conference. And so I think that was a very signature win going into San Antonio and beating a team that won their conference the next year. Sam Houston has been a perennial FCS power, you know, since Coach Keel has been there. Nicholls is now one of the top, probably 15 or 20 FCS programs in the country. And Prairie View has had, you know, close games with those teams. You know, Alcorn State went toe-to-toe with McNeese, almost beat them. Southern had a good game against McNeese, you know, I think this year or just recently. And so I think collectively we're all, Grambling beat Northwestern State, I think, a few years ago. A&T beat Elon. South Carolina State beat Wofford at the start of the season. Wofford was ranked 5th in the country. And so I think collectively we're all interested in playing those type games. You know, let's schedule games against our LCS counterparts. Of course, we don't get the guaranteed payouts that we would get from playing, you know, Group of 5 schools or Power 5 schools at the FBS level. But I think there's a lot of times more value sometimes in the sentiment of it than just the raw finances. You know, we're not going to make $300,000-$400,000 going to play Kennesaw State, you know, or going to play Jacksonville State, which are relatively close schools to Florida A&M. But the national exposure we get for going into in Atlanta and beating Kennesaw, who's a top 10 FCS program, A&T beating Jacksonville State the first game of last season, you know, the national exposure that they received. And so I think that's what we're going to have to continue to do to continue to get the recognition and the credibility that we need. But as long as we have the Celebration Bowl and we kind of pull ourselves out of that automatic qualifier for the FCS playoffs, there's always going to be that gap and always going to be that conversation of whether we're, you know, serious or viable partners or players in the landscape of FCS football, because we don't get to go up against them. We're begging for at-large bids. My first 2 years at Prairie View, you know, I was upset that we didn't get an at-large bid. We didn't win the conference, but I thought that we had done enough on the field to warrant an at-large playoff bid. I would have loved to see us in that 9-2 team that we had with Jonte Hebert and some of those guys. I would have loved to see us go up against the FCS field that year.
I got one response. University of Faith.
Well, no, I don't even think it was University of Faith, because I think, because again, you look at South Carolina State this year. Mm-hmm. South Carolina State's 3 losses were to South Florida, who's an FBS Group of 5 school, FamU, who's a top 25 FCS program, and North Carolina A&T, who's a top 25 FCS program. Those are their 3 losses. They didn't get in that loss. They didn't get in out, and they don't have a University of Faith on their schedule. They beat Wofford to start the season, who was ranked number 5. They lost to an FBS school, and they lost to 2 top 25 FCS programs, and they didn't get in that large bid. So I don't think it's just the fact that we played University of Faith that year. I think it's just like you said, just a general disrespect for the quality of play in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference and the Southwestern Athletic Conference by the powers that be.
Right.
And we don't have much representation in those rooms for the voters of who's making those decisions. And I think until we get representation, we're going to continue to be overlooked, because I guess they kind of figured when we both pulled our automatic qualifying bid that we're not serious about the playoffs. And so why put them in if they're not even serious about it? If they don't want to be in it, why put them in it? And I think that's what's happened to us. And I think you see teams like Prairie View in 15 and South Carolina State this year have suffered tremendously because of that.
Well, and also in regard to that, there's a thing, and would you agree that there's a process to all of this when we're talking about building programs, changing the culture? And if you have a good year, say this year, 2019, you had an outstanding year, but 2, 3, 4, 5 years prior to that, you were subpar, and then you get 1 year breakout, and then you expect that you should be, considered seriously. Do you think because we elected to give back our automatic bid, we have put ourselves behind the 8 ball where we have to dig a little deeper and show more consistency before they even start looking our way and bringing us up at the table?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think if you look at a team like A&T, what they've been able to do over the last 4 or 5 years, they've been, I think they finished the last 4 seasons ranked in the FCS top 25.
Right.
So had we not self-imposed this ban and we've been eligible for the Celebration Bowl, I believe that A&T would have gotten an at-large playoff bid.
Absolutely.
Even though they lost to a 1-8 Morgan State team at the time. And so I think because of their brand, because of what they built over the last 5 years, they have the respect of the FCS community. Now, if we continue to grow the program the way that I think we can, if I think if South Carolina State and continues to grow their program the way that I think they can and have the sustained success as A&T's had, then I think we will have those opportunities. I think it'll be hard for a SWAC team to do it, just because, again, I think with the Bayou Classic being the first week of the playoffs, you're going to have a team basically run the table and lose one game to have a chance to go. And it will never be Southern and Grambling because they play the first round of the playoffs on the Bayou Classic.
Right.
And so it would have to be a Prairie View and Alcorn or someone like that. Well, really not even an Alcorn, because someone on the East, it probably won't happen because, again, they're going to wait to see who's going to play from the West in the championship game. So I think Prairie View is in a situation where they could potentially do it. Again, they'd have to have a great year, maybe lose one game to a Grambling or a Southern. Those two teams are going to play. One of those teams will play in the championship game, and they wait on that large bid. But it's an uphill battle, definitely. Tough, maybe tougher for the SWAC than the MEAC, because the MEAC has had that large bid in the last 10 years. But I do think that it's a challenge that we have to address, and something that we're going to have to continue to lobby for.
We're talking again with Shotgun Willie Simmons from FamU. The Rattlers had a phenomenal season. We've been going a little deep in the woods, if you would, talking about the probabilities and possibilities. On the grand scale of things, and this is probably just a simple yay or nay, do you believe the Celebration Bowl is necessary?
I do. And again, I hate to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. But you can't buy that type of publicity. I think, and I'm, again, adamant about this, even when I go talk to my constituents, Rattler Nation. When you look at the academic landscape of HBCUs, one of the things that I'm proud of, and I can say that now as a head football coach, is that since I've been old enough to remember, Florida A&M has been the number one public HBCU in America. Like I said, as long as I can remember. And just, I think 2 years ago, we lost that title. We dropped to number 2. Now, I think in many of the studies or surveys, we're back to number 1, but the one that we keep battling, ironically, is North Carolina A&T. Now, I don't think it's a coincidence that A&T's enrollment skyrocketed, their popularity skyrocketed, their recruitment skyrocketed when they started playing in the Celebration Bowl. I think the studies have suggested that sports and bowl recognition is probably the largest benefit to a university. They did a study years back when Nick Saban took over at Alabama and asked a question. Of course, everyone talked about how much money he made, but they asked the question, was Nick Saban the most underpaid coach in America? And they did the study to show how much Alabama had grown during his tenure, how many National Merit Scholars they had attracted during that time, how their admissions had gone up, how their average SAT, ACT, GPA scores had gone up since he came in and won the first national championship. If you look at Alcorn State, if you look at A&T, the same could be said about those schools. And to me, it's a direct correlation, because there's a kid out there in California, in Washington, in Utah, who wants to be an engineer and really just feels out of place, and they want to go to an HBCU. They just feel like they need to be around, quote unquote, their people, but they don't know anything about the HBCUs because all of them are in the Southeast or on the East Coast for the most part. They just happen to turn the TV on and they get to see hours of free advertising for North Carolina A&T in their top-notch school of business or engineering or whatever some of their main top programs are. Or there's a band member or whatever the case may be, or even a football player, for example, and you get to see that program on national TV playing, you get to hear them talk about it, and then you start doing your research and you realize that they're really good schools. And I think that's how they've grown. They like I said, their enrollment skyrocketed and a lot of other things have happened. So I do think that there's a tremendous benefit to a bowl game. I think that's what happens across the board. But again, if you're talking about being an FCS program and how competitive we can be, then that's a different conversation. But I do think it's a benefit. The financial payout, the exposure that we get, again, you can't buy those. And I think that's why it's important. But there's some other factors that play in as well as to why the playoffs may be from an athletic standpoint, more, viable, so to speak. But from a university perspective, I do think there's a huge benefit to the Celebration Bowl, even if it doesn't determine the true national champion.
All right. Hey, I'm going to let you roam, brother. Let you roam. We're talking with Shotgun Willie Simmons. We're going to shift gears just for a minute, man. We just had National Signing Day round 1. I'm learning over the years that really and truly matters on the FBS circuit. Christmas for the FCS circuit really begins in January, February. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, I did until I looked up this year and saw that North Dakota State signed 24 players on the early signing period. I think James Madison signed probably 18 players. And so there are a lot of FCS programs now that are taking advantage of the early signing period. We haven't gotten to that point yet. I don't think many of the HBCUs are to that level where we can sign that many guys on signing day. But you look at someone like North Dakota State, they get to go into their national championship game with their recruiting class pretty much intact. They don't have to really worry about going out in January and doing a lot of those things. And so it gives them basically an opportunity to get ahead for next year in the early jump of recruiting. And so I think it's a growing trend. I didn't think it would be when it first was introduced, the early signing period. I thought it would definitely be just an FBS thing. Well, only FBS teams will sign guys, and if a player's considered an FCS program, those are all offers that he has, that he wait around to see if the FBS schools will come. But I think, again, you got programs that are positioning themselves to say, hey, look, we have everything that you can ask for. We're a good school, we're a good program, and we've offered you. We want you. And you can sit around and wait for a group of 5 school to come to the fold. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But if you visit it here, if you like it here, hey, come. And I think a lot of guys, surprisingly, are doing that. And they're going to those FCS programs. And so I still think it's mainly for the big boys, so to speak. But you do see a growing trend of guys starting to sign FCS scholarships at the early signing period. And so hopefully we can get to that point. It will feel great to be able to come in and say we signed 10 guys, high school players or transfers already. We have 2. We've only signed 2. And we'll do the bulk of our recruiting in January. But surprisingly, though, it has a lot of FCS programs have started to sign guys in the early period.
Right. Now, it's also, you got to deal with the psyche of a young man who, let's say, for lack of a better word, he thought he was FBS material, and for whatever reason, the reality settled in. They said, you're good, but you're not as good as you think you are. Now he feels like he has to, quote unquote, settle for an FCS program. Do you see that as a potential challenge and disruption to a team or a program that's trying to build, where this person has a talent, but they're coming in with an attitude because they feel like this program is beneath them?
Well, I don't think so. But again, I think it's because the programs that are doing it have the infrastructure, they have the program in place and where it needs to be, to be able to go into that home and sell themselves to that prospective student athlete or their parents and say, hey, look, we're offering you the exact same thing that a group of 5 school can potentially come in and offer, because that's what you're quote unquote waiting on. You're waiting for that Division One, and that's what many of them say. I want to play Division One ball. Well, we all are Division One. Now you got FBS, FCS, obviously, and the difference goes down to just funding, scholarship numbers, and things like that. But if you're a team that can offer a full scholarship, offer cost of attendance, which is one of the things that separates the upper echelon FCS programs from the right now the HBCUs, the MEAC and the SWAC, those schools can offer cost of attendance. So if you're a North Dakota State, if you're a Sam Houston State or James Madison, you can offer a young man a full scholarship as well as a cost of attendance stipend. So if I'm a kid in Texas and I grew up saying I wanted to play quote unquote Division I football, am I going to really wait around for Texas State, North Texas, UTEP, Rice, and those guys to come around if Sam Houston's offering me a full ride plus an extra $500 a month on a full cost of attendance stipend? Is it really worth waiting around for a group of 5 offer? Now, if you think Texas is going to come, then yeah, that's no brainer. But in those situations, if you don't have offers, Texas ain't coming in January. They hadn't offered already. So you're really talking about whether you're going to sign an FCS scholarship or wait for a group of 5 scholarship. But again, if your program is positioned itself where they can offer great facilities, a winning tradition, full scholarship, and cost of attendance, then if I'm a parent, I'm telling my son, you better sign with this school. This school wants you. This scholarship is here for you today. It may not be here tomorrow. And Texas State may not come into play. Plus, you look at the records over the last few years, who's had better teams, Texas State or Sam Houston? Sam Houston. So if you're looking at a situation like that, or North Dakota State, or again, I keep mentioning them, but those type of teams, I think again the growing trend for these young men, and the coaches are advising them, and they're doing a great job, is to say, look, take the bird that's in the hand. It's a good bird. You got a full ride, you got cost of attendance, and all those things. The issues that we face is that we're not able to give cost of attendance, and so we're telling the young man, hey, we can give you a full ride, but that's it, because we're not paying cost of attendance at this point. And so if a group of 5 schools says, hey, just hold off, we're going to wait on one guy to sign. If he doesn't sign, you're our guy, and we can offer you this extra $500 a semester or a month, then now the finances come into play, and you got a parent who maybe a single parent working 2 jobs to put a kid through school. That is a lot more enticing now. And so that's where we kind of lose out sometimes in those situations, as opposed to the schools who can do that. And but if we can ever get to that point where we can offer cost of attendance, I think the sky's the limit for places like FamU and some of the other historic HBCUs that have brand recognition that can go in the homes and compete with our PWI counterparts.
I understand fully what you just explained, but to me, it feels like and sounds like another moving target, because let's be honest, you say the stipend of $500 a month per student, which doesn't sound like a lot, and it's definitely not a lot. You can ask anybody that's on any type of government assistance, Social Security, but that would set us back tremendously to pay that, because then you got to ask the question, how much do you give to basketball players? How much do you give to non-revenue players, if anything? It becomes a very tangled web, and another target. By the time we figure it out, they done already added another target to move the direction yet again.
Well, you're right. But again, that's the $1 million question, and that's why college athletics has become just one of the topics of conversation outside of our president is because of that. The finances, the financial aspect of it, from what we can generate, but also what we have to pay out. There's an article today about Clemson and how much they've paid to go to Arizona for the college football playoffs the last 4 years or whatever they've gone. I mean, it's to $5 million a year in just logistics and expenses to go play in the semifinal game. Now they're going to make a lot more than that with their TV revenue and all of those things. But you're talking about having to come up with $5 million to just go to Arizona. And so, of course, the costs, they're up there. And that's why I keep saying it is when you talk about the playoffs versus the Celebration Bowl, if A&T was in a position this year to choose, which technically they were, which one makes more sense for them? Go make $600,000 to play in Atlanta, or go pay $40,000 to play in the first round of the playoffs. Because if you're not going to host, you still have to pay travel expenses. And A&T probably wouldn't have hosted because their schedule wasn't enough. They wouldn't have won the bid. They'll be able to host a first round game. So if you're going to commit to the playoffs, which we've had for years, it's a cost associated with it. And so that's why, again, the conversation is always going to be there. Which one makes more sense? And I know you have your purists who say, we're still in the Chitlin circuit. We're going to play this, whatever name you want to give the Celebration Bowl, saying that it's not worthy. But again, if someone's going to commit to giving us $600,000 every year, then hey, I turn it down every year. I say let's go to the playoffs. But the chance for us to make that much money to play a like opponent and not have to go play a guarantee game against a bigger, faster, stronger team, I don't think you can pass the opportunity up. And so until we can get ourselves financially on par with our Group of 5 counterparts or even some of the upper echelon FCS counterparts, I do think we're going to have to find creative ways to generate revenue. And the Celebration Bowl, just fortunately for us right now, is one of those revenue streams.
Man, I got a great idea, and I'm going to bounce this off of you, and let me see what you think about it. We know about the latest breakdowns in negotiations between CBS and the SEC. It's been reported that ESPN, ABC is going to be offering $350 to $400 million per season to the SEC for broadcasting rights. With CBS getting up to $300 million, do you believe that there is a financial backing that makes sense that CBS says, you know what, we have the NFL, we got March Madness, let us invest and talk to the people directing the FCS status, and let's create a bowl to where the HBCUs don't have to play the Celebration Bowl because everybody got a pretty sweet TV deal through their conference.
Well, I think, so this is my position on this. I don't think that FCS would ever be attractive enough for the powers that be to commit millions of dollars to a TV deal. And the reason I say this is because most of these programs don't have the brand recognition that the SEC, the ACC, the Power 5. You even look at the Group of 5 schools. Conference USA's TV deal pales in comparison to the Power 5s, the Big Ten, the ACC, SEC, the WAC, the Sun Belt. I mean, you're talking about, I think, maybe $1 million deal to distribute amongst the member schools, as opposed to $300-some million deals for the SEC or $200 million for the ACC. So I just, unless you're one of those Power 5 teams, I don't think you'll ever do it. Now, this is what I have always said. I do believe that we, and when I say we, I'm not talking about FCS teams. I'm talking about HBCUs. I think we have a unique position because of just what we are and who we are. We still, to this day, spend more money than anyone. But when I say we, I'm talking about black people. So because we still do, guess what people are going to continue to do? They're going to advertise to us. What better way to advertise than to do it during a football game when you have millions of people watching? So if you can, someone, I don't know who it can be. I don't know if it's the OWN network. I don't know if it's BET. I don't know who it is. But if you can convince someone to commit millions of dollars to the SWAC, the MEAC, even if you include the SIAC, the CIAA, and some of those conferences, CAA, not CAA, but the HBCU conferences, and say, we're going to broadcast, have television rights to these games and generate the type of revenue that again, even if it won't be that type of deal, $300 million, but even if you say $10 million, let's say if you said $10 million TV distribution deal to the MEAC and the SWAC. That's $1 million per team,
right,
a year.
And that's what I'm saying.
But again, you have to. So I think you have to sell our buying power, not the FCS status, because I think you separate us from that. But you have to. Somebody has to pitch the fact that there's a large contingency of Rattlers out there who will turn the TV on a Saturday afternoon to watch FamU play A&T. There's a large contingency of Grambling State Tigers out there who will turn the TV on and watch Grambling play Prairie View, and not just the Bayou Classic. So if we can do that, but we got to get the quality of the games better. We have to, again, find ways to improve our facilities and then start to get some of these top tier players back to us and do that. I think it's possible. But again, it's a lofty goal. But I do think there's a chance that it can happen if the right people at the table with the right sales pitch to speak on our buying power. Because I still think that we do have buying power, and I think we have a lot of the tradition amongst our HBCUs, especially now that we're restoring some of these rivalries. The fact that we're playing Southern again is really, regenerated a lot of excitement for not just Rattler Nation, but Jaguar Nation. This growing rivalry that we have with North Carolina A&T now. Again, Grambling and Southern and Alcorn and it's starting to really pick up. And so we can have these marquee games yearly where you say, Alcorn's going to play South Carolina State, or Prairie View's going to play FamU, or Southern's going to play Bethune. If you have those interconference matchups like the Power 5 schools do to generate interest among the programs, I think it can be done. But again, that's just me talking.
I understand, and I'm just a talk show host with a true vision, because what I was saying, hypothetically, CBS walked away from the SEC, or should I say, they rendered them back to the open market, because if they wanted to, they could have paid what they had or what they needed to retain them. And with that being said, the NFL, okay, we have the March Madness. We're making money. And to make a smaller investment, let's say they committed to a $20 million television deal between the MEAC and the SWAC. They still are spending pennies on a dollar and would make money through ad sales. That's what I'm talking about.
No, and I agree. But again, somebody has to go to the table with it, and I'm not so sure that CBS or ESPN or one of those mega broadcast companies would bite it right now. I think if you could, I think BET would be prime for it. I think.
You do understand that CBS owns BET.
Well, yeah, but I think they would push it down to one of them. It wouldn't be a quote unquote CBS TV viewing. CBS
what I'm saying, you can play your bowl game on the CBS local affiliate. You can run that, but between the CBS Sports app and BET, you have more than enough time slots to get these games going. You could
I think you do it to where, again, if you have it to where every Saturday, just like the SEC, ACC, the big networks do, I think you do that every Saturday during football season, you have a marquee, just like ESPN has now, supposedly. Of course, we ain't going to talk about that deal, but just like it's positioned now, where you have the game of the week. To me, if you have a Black College, quote-unquote, game of the week, on whatever network that is, then I think it makes sense. And again,
I'm talking about the best of both worlds because of the time zone difference. You could have an AM and a PM game of the week from both conferences.
Well, yeah, you definitely can. Yeah, no doubt.
And I think it's something worth kicking the tires on, and that's my battle cry, because I know and believe in the content of these conferences, and I'll take that to my grave. Can't nobody tell me anything different. Now, it is a unique brand. It's a unique operations, but I think it's an operation. If my take is this, if CBS was willing to pay the Mountain West Conference $16 million for a TV deal. The Mountain West Conference. I'll say that one more time. The Mountain West Conference. I'm sure they would be getting a bargain, spending 15 to 20 million for the MEAC and the SWAC combined.
I agree.
I think we need to put that together. Look, man, we're gonna have to reconvene this because it's always a joy talking with you and getting your take on some things. And we didn't even get a chance to talk about the FBS playoffs. But real quickly, I already know who you picking on one side. Who do you?
Let me go. Clemson gonna win it all. I think it'll be Clemson and LSU.
Clemson and LSU. I'm saying Clemson and Oklahoma. So
wow, you're going Oklahoma over LSU?
I'm going Oklahoma over LSU. I have my reasons.
You being partial to your Texas guys. You got to be partial.
No, that has nothing to do with Texas at all. I promise you, it has nothing to do with Texas. I just believe that what Jalen Hurts has done. I think he got snubbed out of the Heisman Trophy.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. I really do.
I don't know about that. Now, I think Jalen had a phenomenal year, but when you look at what Joe Burrow is, I mean, he set a record for completion percentage.
I understand that, and I'm not taking it. I'm not taking anything from that.
Yards, 48 touchdown passes. I mean, like coming from LSU, first of all, who's been a pro-style offense for a million years.
I understand that.
Put up those type of numbers in the SEC West. I don't know if you can say. There's a reason it was the most lopsided.
Well, I got my druthers on that too, but I won't even get into that. But here's why I'm saying this. Look at the body of work Hurts put in at Alabama.
But that's the thing. Yeah. If you look into a lifetime, but then that's always the question: is it a lifetime?
But I'm talking about consistency. Consistency. This man
over the course of over his career. You're right.
Yeah, and then for you to jump to a whole entire system, and to have Oklahoma. Not that Oklahoma was a bottom dweller, but to have them relevant for the FBS playoffs and what he did and how he wheeled that team. He carried that team on his back.
Well, I think if they don't lose to Kansas State, I think he's in the conversation. I
understand that.
That loss hurt him.
That loss hurt him.
The Heisman has been the best player on the best team, and then Joe Burrow right now is the best player on the best team in college football. And so it would have been hard for anybody to. This year particularly. Now, years past, I think it would have been up for discussion. But this year, given what he's done and how he's done it in the year that they've had, it would have been hard to ever give anybody a more deserving. Now, again, there are guys who do. Chase Young, I think there's never been a defensive player who deserves it more than Chase Young and what he's done at Ohio State. But just looking at the year that he's had, I don't think anyone can. You can probably say I think Trevor Lawrence deserves to be in New York.
Mm-hmm.
About what he's done this year.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a historic year for Joe Burrow, and I mean this is one of the best single years in the history of college football from that position. That's saying a lot.
I understand that, but would you agree that the game is not nearly played the way it was 50, 60 years ago? Neither. So
it's not, but you still have to cater it to the changes. I mean, it's still the time that we're in. So running backs aren't ever really.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. If you were to take Burrow from LSU and say take him to Texas A&M, no, that's still in the SEC. Let's say he went to Oklahoma State. Do you think he would have the numbers that he had, or the impact that he had?
Well, you know what? And again, I see where you're going with that, but you also have to consider that Jalen Hurts did leave and go to who's considered the wonder kid of quarterbacks in college football. I mean, the guys only had the last two Heisman Trophy winners.
I understand that. I understand that.
Is it because of Jalen and his skill set? Because again, we've seen an element from Jalen that we've never seen before, and that's him throwing the football the way he has. Because at Alabama, that was always just not, that he wasn't a great passer. But Lincoln Riley has really developed him into a strong passing quarterback, which will be, I think, why the game will be more interesting than, maybe people give him credit for.
That's why they're going to win.
But, well, it'll be interesting to see. But I do think that you look at Joe Burrow and again, but it's Joe Brady. They bring in a guy from the New Orleans Saints who brings the New Orleans Saints passing game to LSU's plethora of weapons, and this guy just goes.
He went off. I'm not.
He's the number one pick in the draft now.
I understand that.
I think it's Jalen Hurts. If he had won it, there would definitely be a lot of people talking. But he's probably deserving of the award by how he's played. But I think the same can be said about Chase Young. I think the same can be said about Trevor Lawrence and even Justin Fields. I mean, this kid has thrown 50 touchdown passes at Ohio State this year. And so it's been a great year for college quarterbacks. And the unique thing is 3 of the 4 teams that are playing, you got transfer quarterbacks playing for those guys.
Right.
That came in and played immediately. So, but I think it'll be one of the most interesting college football playoffs that we've had. I think it's 4 really good teams. I don't think you'll have the blowouts that you've had in years past. And I think either of those 4 teams can come out of winning a championship. So I'm definitely going to be glued to my TV all day Saturday. I'll be rooting my boys on at 8 o'clock, as alwaais. But, hey, you're the champ till you get knocked off, right?
Absolutely.
Yet, so
and with that being said, man, we are going to fade into the sunset. I want to thank you so much, brother. We're going to get together after these first rounds and we get ready for this national championship square up. I'm going to have to get you on the Sunday Night Live show, man, see what you think about that, and we'll go from there. How that sound, man?
Well, that sounds good, man. You have a time restraints on those, though, so we might not be able to do those. We get to kind of roll on these.
Hey, as always, man, we appreciate you. Continued happy holidays. Relax. Send my love to the family and the loved ones, man. And you take care of yourself, and we'll talk real soon, okay?
Always, brother. Appreciate everything, man. Happy holidays, and always appreciate what you do for us.
All right, man. Coach Shotgun Willie Simmons of the FamU Rattlers. Man, did we have a lot to get off our chest and onto the table. That is going to do it for us on today. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. Remember our social media handles for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or at The Mike Prince Show. The YouTube channel is Open Mic Broadcast Network. And don't forget to check us out on our live radio stream on TuneIn Radio at Open Mic Broadcast Network. And until the next time, you guys be blessed, and we'll see you on the other side.